The Galactic Council chamber was a vast, domed structure, its walls lined with banners representing 100 star systems. Holographic projections flickered above the long, curved table where the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat. The air crackled with tension. Supreme Chancellor Virex, an elder of the Zarathian race, adjusted his ceremonial robes and cleared his throat. His normally serene blue skin had taken on a paler hue, betraying his unease. Around him sat the representatives of the Galactic Alliance, each from species that had thrived under centuries of peace. But today, there was no peace. "We are losing," Virex admitted, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The war against the Zelnari has reached a tipping point. Our fleets are scattered, our defenses overwhelmed. The enemy is pushing into the inner rim. If we do not act now, they will reach the core worlds within months." A murmur of agreement spread through the chamber. The Zelnari were unlike any enemy the Alliance had faced before. A nightmarish, insectoid species, they did not conquer planets, they consumed them. Wherever they landed, life was eradicated, biomass stripped down to its rawest form, fueling their endless expansion. The Andoran ambassador, Zyrol, a tall, reptilian figure with gold-tinged scales, leaned forward. His yellow eyes gleamed with suspicion. "And what action do you propose, Chancellor?" Virex hesitated before speaking. "We must consider bringing back the humans." A stunned silence filled the room. For decades, the human race had been an unspoken taboo among the Galactic Council. Once, they had been members of the Alliance, but their aggressive nature, their insatiable hunger for war, had made them dangerous. A century ago, after a devastating conflict, the Council had exiled them, barring them from civilized space. Ambassador Zyrol's expression twisted in disgust. "You cannot be serious. We banished them for a reason. They are unstable, violent. And they are the only ones who can win this war," Admiral Celine Carter interrupted. She was the sole human in the chamber, a relic of a bygone era when her people had been part of the Alliance. Though she had earned the respect of some, most viewed her as an unfortunate necessity. Zyrol's clawed fingers tapped the table. "Bringing them back would be a mistake. They will turn against us the moment the war is over. They are the only species that understands war on the level the Zelnari do," Carter countered. "Every other race in this room has known peace for centuries. Your fleets fight to hold the line. Humans fight to win." Virex interjected before the debate could spiral further. "There is no alternative. If the Zelnari reach the core, it will not matter whether we trust the humans or not. We will all be dead." Silence followed his words. Finally, the Vasari delegate, a being of pure energy encased in a crystalline exosuit, spoke in its reverberating voice. "And if they refuse?" "They won't," Carter said, a small, knowing smile crossing her face. Because, deep down, she knew the truth. The humans were waiting for this moment. The shadow of humanity. The Council's decision sent ripples across the galaxy. Within days, encrypted messages were dispatched to the last known human enclaves, reaching deep into the lawless sectors beyond the Alliance's borders. Somewhere in the Outer Rim, on the desolate planet of Argos 7, an old warrior received the call. General Damian Rourke stood at the edge of a barren cliff, the wind howling against his battle-scarred armor. His face, lined with age and experience, remained unreadable as he watched the message play out on his wrist communicator. The Galactic Council, his old enemies, were begging for help. Behind him, a group of hardened veterans observed in silence. These were not fresh recruits. These were the last remnants of a forgotten army, men and women who had fought and bled in wars long erased from history. Warriors who had been cast out, only to survive in the darkest corners of the galaxy. "They finally came crawling back," muttered a soldier with a cybernetic eye. Rourke exhaled slowly. "Took them long enough." "They need us," said another veteran. "After all these years, they finally admit it." Rourke turned to face them. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of authority. "This isn't about the Council. It's about the Zelnari. You've seen what they do. Planets stripped bare, entire civilizations erased. If we let this war play out without us, there won't be anything left." A younger soldier, barely out of his 20s, spoke up. "So, we fight for them?" Rourke shook his head. "We fight for survival. Just like we always have." He glanced at the old battle flag draped over a rusted supply crate, the emblem of a world that had turned its back on them. With a final look at the horizon, he spoke the words that would change the fate of the galaxy. "Prepare the fleet. We're going back." The arrival of ghosts. 1 week later, the stars above the rendezvous point shimmered as the first human warships emerged from hyperspace. They were nothing like the sleek, pristine vessels of the Galactic Alliance. These were war machines built for brutality, scarred from past battles, reinforced with scavenged armor, bristling with outdated but effective weaponry. They looked like relics of an ancient era, but their presence sent an undeniable message. Humanity had returned. The largest among them, the dreadnought Hellspear, loomed over the assembled fleet. Aboard it, General Rourke stood at the command deck, watching as the Council's delegation prepared to board. When Rourke stepped onto the bridge of the Galactic flagship, all eyes turned to him. The non-human officers stiffened, clearly uncomfortable. He was a relic, a ghost from their history books, an enemy now called to be an ally. Chancellor Virex himself had come to meet him, standing alongside Admiral Carter. Rourke studied the gathered leaders, his expression unreadable. "You summoned us," he said. "That means you're losing." Virex exhaled. "General Rourke, we—" "Spare me the speeches," Rourke interrupted. "What do you need?" Carter stepped forward. "The Zelnari are unlike any enemy the Alliance has fought before. We need your expertise. We need your warriors." Rourke chuckled, shaking his head. "You exiled us. You called us monsters. And now, you want us to clean up your mess." His gaze swept across the room. "We don't do politics. We don't take orders. If we fight, we do it on our terms." Zyrol snarled. "That is outrageous. We cannot allow." Rourke cut him off with a single glare. "You don't have a choice." Silence filled the room. Finally, Virex sighed. "Very well. But we must work together." Rourke smirked. "No. You stay out of our way. We don't coordinate. We win." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving the Council in stunned silence. Humanity had returned to the battlefield, and the war was about to change forever. The human fleet moved like a phantom through the war-torn edges of the Galactic Alliance's territory. Unlike the methodical, cautious approach of the Alliance forces, the humans operated with brutal efficiency, striking deep into enemy territory without waiting for full tactical assessments. Within days of their return, General Damian Rourke and his warriors had already set their sights on the most contested battlefield, Draconis V. A once thriving industrial world, it had become a graveyard of warships and smoldering ruins. The Zelnari invasion force had nearly overwhelmed the last Alliance defenders, and the fall of Draconis V would mean a direct path to the core worlds. Rourke, standing on the bridge of the dreadnought Hellspear, observed the tactical display. Unlike the nervous energy that filled the Council's war rooms, his officers remained calm, their eyes hardened by decades of battle. "Our scouts confirm heavy Zelnari presence," said Captain Elias Grant, one of Rourke's most trusted officers. "The Alliance has been fighting a losing battle. They've dug in, but their lines won't hold for more than another 2 days." Rourke studied the holographic battlefield. "What's the enemy strength?" 2 full Zelnari warhives, approximately 80,000 ground forces, supported by orbital bombardment platforms. Rourke smirked. "Outnumbered, outgunned. Just the way we like it." Carter, standing beside him, shook her head. "We should coordinate with the Alliance forces. If we hit from both sides—" No, Rourke's voice was firm. "The Council fights defensively. They hesitate, they negotiate. We don't. We hit fast, we hit hard, and we don't stop until the enemy is wiped out." Carter frowned but didn't argue. She knew Rourke well enough to understand that once he committed to a strategy, there was no changing his mind. And deep down, she also knew he was right. Rourke turned to his fleet officers. "Prepare for atmospheric entry." Deploy the ground teams the moment we hit orbit. No prisoners. The order was given. The humans were going in first. The shock of human warfare. When the human forces landed on Draconis 5, the Zelnari expected the same cautious, strategic maneuvers that the Galactic Alliance used. They were wrong. The moment the human dropships hit the surface, the battlefield transformed. Human soldiers moved in organized, brutal formations, cutting through the insectoid hordes with terrifying efficiency. Unlike the Alliance's tactics, focused on preserving forces and retreating when necessary, human warriors advanced without hesitation. They fought with a primal ferocity, using close-quarters combat, heavy incendiary weapons, and brutal shock tactics. One by one, Zelnari strongholds fell. General Rourke himself led the charge in the heart of the battle, his custom exosuit covered in the blood of fallen enemies. He wielded an old Earth-made ballistic rifle, an outdated weapon by Alliance standards, but one that still ripped through Zelnari chitin like paper. Behind him, his elite soldiers, veterans who had spent their lives in battle, moved like ghosts, taking down enemy commanders and destroying key supply lines. By the time the Alliance forces arrived, the battlefield was already shifting in humanity's favor. The Council's generals, who had expected a prolonged, bloody conflict, were stunned. Instead of being bogged down, the Zelnari were retreating, their forces shattered by the sheer brutality of the attack. On the command deck of the Alliance flagship, Ambassador Zyrol watched in horror as live battle footage played on the main screen. Human soldiers were executing wounded Zelnari, incinerating enemy hatcheries, and taking no prisoners. This is madness, Zyrol muttered. Chancellor Virex, standing beside him, remained silent. He had expected human efficiency. He had not expected total annihilation. They are monsters, Zyrol whispered. We should never have brought them back. But even as he said it, he knew the truth. The humans had won the battle in record time, something the Alliance had failed to do for months. The fallout. After the battle, an emergency meeting was called aboard the Alliance flagship. The non-human leaders were in an uproar. This cannot continue. Zyrol slammed his fist onto the table. We fight wars with honor. The humans fight like savages. Rourke, seated at the far end of the table, leaned back in his chair, unimpressed. You call us savages, he said, but we just saved your damn planet. Virex, rubbing his temples, turned to Carter. Do you condone this? The execution of prisoners? The slaughter of entire hatcheries? Carter hesitated. The Zelnari do not take prisoners. They do not show mercy. She glanced at Rourke. And humans don't fight wars halfway. Zyrol hissed. If we let them continue, we will become no better than the enemy. Rourke chuckled. You don't get it, do you? You're already at war. The Zelnari don't care about your honor. They don't care about your rules of engagement. They exist to consume. The only way to beat them is to be worse than them. Virex sighed. We cannot afford to lose humanity's strength. But we also cannot afford to lose our own principles. Rourke stood up. Principles don't mean much when you're dead, Chancellor. With that, he walked out of the chamber, leaving the Council divided. The Zelnari counterattack. The victory at Draconis 5 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. For the first time, the Zelnari had been pushed back. But the war was far from over. As the Council debated the morality of human warfare, intelligence reports flooded in. The Zelnari, realizing that humanity posed a true threat, had begun massing an even greater fleet. Their target? The core worlds themselves. If they succeeded, it would be the end of the Alliance. The Council had no choice. Despite their fears, despite their moral objections, they turned to Rourke once more. We need you, Virex admitted, his voice grim. Rourke smirked. You needed us from the start. He turned to his officers. Prepare the fleet. It's time to finish this war. With that, the humans, once exiled, once feared, took charge of the galaxy's last hope. And they were just getting started. The war was nearing its climax. The Zelnari, now fully aware of the threat humanity posed, had mobilized their largest fleet in history. Their target, the core worlds, the heart of the Galactic Alliance. The humans, once exiled, were now the only thing standing between the enemy and total annihilation. The gathering storm. Rourke stood aboard the Hellspear, staring at the star map. The Zelnari armada was on the move, their organic warships blotting out entire sectors. The Galactic Alliance had reinforced their defenses, but Rourke knew it wasn't enough. "They outnumber us 10-1, Captain Grant said grimly. "We've been outnumbered before," Rourke replied. Ambassador Zyrol, still uneasy about working with the humans, interjected. "You cannot possibly be considering a direct assault. We should hold our defenses and let them come to us." Rourke smirked. "That's why you keep losing. You wait. You hesitate. We don't." Virex sighed. "What do you propose, General?" Rourke's eyes gleamed. "We don't wait for them to reach the core. We hit them first. Hard." The room fell silent. Then Carter grinned. "A preemptive strike?" "Not just any strike," Rourke said. "We go for their queen mind." The Zelnari were a hive species, guided by a singular intelligence. If they could take out the queen mind, they could shatter the swarm. But it wouldn't be easy. The queen mind was hidden deep within their territory, surrounded by millions of Zelnari warriors. It was a suicide mission, which meant it was perfect for humanity. The infiltration. The plan was simple. 1. A small human strike team would infiltrate the Zelnari homeworld, locate the queen mind, and plant an antimatter bomb. 2. Meanwhile, the main fleet would engage the Zelnari forces, drawing attention away from the infiltration team. 3. If successful, the Zelnari would collapse from within. Rourke personally led the infiltration team. Carter, against orders, insisted on going with him. "You think I'm letting you have all the fun?" she smirked. The team inserted deep into enemy space aboard a stealth frigate. The Zelnari homeworld, Nirvok, was a nightmarish wasteland of organic spires and rivers of bioluminescent sludge. The air was thick with spores, and the ground pulsed as if alive. Moving undetected, the team advanced through the twisted labyrinth of the hive. But they weren't alone. The Zelnari felt them. One by one, warriors emerged from the walls, shrieking. The battle began. Human firepower ripped through the creatures, but they kept coming. The deeper they went, the worse it got. The hive was alive, reacting to them. "We won't last long at this rate," Carter warned. "We don't need to," Rourke growled, setting the bomb. "We just need a way out." Then the Queen Mind spoke. A deafening voice filled their minds. "You think you are different. You are not. You are just another species waiting to be consumed." Rourke gritted his teeth. "Come and get us, then." They fought their way to the extraction point as the bomb's timer ticked down. Zelnari warriors swarmed, but the humans held the line. And boom. The hive imploded, a shockwave tearing through the Zelnari forces. The Queen Mind was dead. The final battle. With the Queen Mind gone, the Zelnari fleets fractured. Their once perfect coordination broke down as individual swarms turned chaotic. The Alliance fleet, led by Admiral Carter, pushed forward. The battle turned from a last stand into a slaughter. Rourke, barely surviving the mission, returned to the Hellspear just in time to see the tide shift. "Looks like we did it," Grant said. Rourke smirked. "Yeah, we did." The Zelnari, leaderless and broken, were hunted down across the galaxy. Humanity, once exiled, had saved the galaxy. Aftermath. The war was over. The Galactic Council, now fully aware of humanity's power, faced a difficult choice. Zyrol, still uneasy, addressed the Council. "They are too dangerous to be allowed to remain unchecked." Virex sighed. "They saved us." Rourke, standing before them, smirked. "And we can destroy you just as easily." Silence. Then Carter stepped forward. "We didn't fight to rule. We fought to survive. But don't forget this, humanity will never be slaves. Never again." Virex nodded. "Then let us make peace." For the first time in history, the humans were not outcasts. They were equals. And as Rourke looked out at the stars, he knew one thing. The galaxy would never be the same. Epilogue. Years later, as new threats emerged beyond the known systems, one message echoed across the stars. Send in the humans. And so, once again, they prepared for war. Because war was in their blood. And the galaxy would always need its monsters.